Like I was reading Lord of the Rings. I'm like, wait a minute, these are adults singing about like what I'm reading. I want to learn everything about these dudes and like how they looked, the way they dressed, what they did. And then they were like, what are these things called? Drugs.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us on the Elation podcast today. We're with Murf Reeves. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing really good today.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, thank you for having me here.
WWOZ's own.
Music director,
show host, all kinds of things, right?
Carry the heavy stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's good to see you. How was your holiday?
My holiday was good. It was very relaxing. I got to spend some time with my family, and I did a breathwork retreat, which is something I've been doing for the last couple of years that is sort of, I don't want to say taking over my life, but becoming more and more important to me.
Yeah.
And becoming more and more of a focus.
I got you.
And it's in my personal life and my professional life.
A retreat, how long?
It was 3 days.
Okay.
It was here in New Orleans.
Okay.
So the first day was 3 hours. The second day was 12 hours. And the third day was like 3 hours. And then we had a wrap up.
Okay.
And each day there was different, sessions, classes. And it's a lot of connected conscious breathing in a community setting.
That's cool.
And it's about, it's amazing. Getting past fight or flight and processing trauma, illogical thoughts, maybe systems you set up when you were 5 to get through something, and now you're in your 50s and it's still running you. So it's how to process those things and integrate them into your life.
No, that's awesome. No, my brother-in-law does a few retreats. I normally just take mushrooms and deal with it that way, but
it's similar to that.
Yeah.
In fact, some say that when you are in a connected conscious breathing state, your brain is very in the same state as if you were on psilocybin.
Right.
So I was like, wait a minute. I can do this.
I've been here
just
before.
Breathing. I don't have to take any mushrooms.
Right. I'm in, right.
I'm still going to take mushrooms. But.
Well, then that would be like, double, right? Yeah.
But a lot of these things, when you look at shamanic cultures and cultures where music and theater weren't just for entertainment.
Right.
It was how to bring, someone would come to the shaman and be like, yo, I got these crazy thoughts in my head. And like, okay, we're going to go through this ritual where we can safely bring it into the world.
Right.
Where instead of not you just acting it out and hurting someone or yourself.
Right.
Because everything starts out as a thought. So
100%.
How do I cultivate this thought? Yeah. And bring it here safely and say, okay, I thought about hurting this person and now I got to the reason why. And now I don't want to hurt them. I can work on this. A flaw of mine or a lower point that I can raise.
Right. Well, I used to meditate a little bit, and the only way that I could actually get to meditation was listening to that, some type of vibration music that would help me get there. I couldn't clear my mind otherwise. So music is obviously a channel, not only for communication, but for healing.
Agreed. I think its primary function is healing and communication. Entertainment is just a side product that's awesome.
Right.
Music, everything's vibration. Everything in the universe is vibration. Your prefrontal cortex is made to accept, understand, translate vibrations. Trees are like vibration amplifiers.
Right.
And then everything's got a frequency.
100%.
Our organs, the planets, all that.
100%. And I feel like the part of the reason they've pushed down mushrooms and psilocybin is because it kind of opens that door, amongst some other things that, DMT and some of the things that a lot of these guys are doing. And I don't know if I can't get that deep into it, but I definitely enjoy expanding thought process of barriers.
Breaking them down. And also, if you really heal yourself, you don't need those people.
Right.
And that's how they stay in business.
Right.
You constantly give them money. You go to the doctor and get the pills, and they
That's how drug dealers make their money on the comeback.
Correct. And you're handling the symptoms. You're just not handling the cause.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Absolutely. No. They don't want to cure anything. They want you to take drugs to be able to live with it.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's some deep story to get right off the top of. But let's talk. Let's tell little people like where you're from and where you grew up. Where'd you go to school in New
Yeah,
Orleans? Like,
I'm not from New Orleans.
okay,
I grew up in the Northeast.
okay,
I was born in New York City, and I was raised in Pennsylvania.
okay.
I went to Pennsbury High School, which probably doesn't mean that much here. But yeah, that was the place where I learned about music. I actually I blame my dad for music and everything.
Blame him.
I blame him. Like, Dad, if you wanted me to be the way you wanted me to be, you should never let me see those Columbia record ads. I don't know if you remember those.
No.
So I'm 53. So growing up, before cable, there was just the three main stations, and in the week you got a TV guide and
Right.
it listed what was on throughout the week. and
Right,
no
I remember
bias.
the TV guide for sure.
And in the front, they would have little articles, but Columbia Records always had an ad, and you could get 12 cassettes for a penny. And once you bought those,
Wow.
like, you were sort of in a subscription, and they wanted you to buy more. So my dad did it one day, and he's like, "Do you want some cassettes?" And I was like, "Yes."
Yeah.
So the very first three pieces of music I got, adult music, the Doors' greatest hits,
Wow.
the Who Face Dances,
Okay.
and Led Zeppelin 4.
Wow. What great pieces. I
Yeah.
mean, wow.
And so I started listening to those, and like, especially in Led Zeppelin on, I think it's Stairway to Heaven, where he's like quoting Gandalf, and like, I was reading Lord of the Rings. I'm like, wait a minute, these are adults singing about like what I'm reading. I want to learn everything about these dudes,
Right.
and like how they looked, the way they dressed, what they did, and then they were like, "What are these things called? Drugs?" So this was before the internet, so you had to go seek out all the information.
Right.
The publications came out maybe once a month.
Right.
I couldn't.
And they weren't all 100% fully transparent either,
Correct.
Yeah.
They wrote what they wanted, so you just had to go read as much as you can.
Yeah.
And then sort of create your own persona, and then if you got a chance to see the band live,
Right.
it would see if it would live up to what you
It would
thought.
translate, right.
But there was so much more emotion into it, anticipation. What is this gonna? You had to wait.
Mhm.
Like, there
Well,
wasn't.
and I feel like because there was no distractions, you really learned what they were trying to say. You got the message.
And it was still, it was monetized, but it was also art, and they were sort of on equal footing.
Mhm.
So everything meant something. The liner notes meant something. The photos meant something. The thank you notes meant something.
Right.
So as a listener, you got so much information from reading what they put in there.
Right. Right.
And that's one of the things how I started listening to music was I was like, what is a producer and what is an engineer? And on these seemingly unrelated bands that sound very different or recorded in different places, that guy, the engineer's on both of them.
Right.
So why is he on a heavy metal album and a hip hop album?
Right.
Like, why did that guy get called?
Right.
And so then I started reading about those kind of people and realizing, oh, like, these are the people in between the music that really sort of kind of brings it all together.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny because I was similarly intrigued with the writers and producers and more than the actual artists, because I'm like, man, I'm watching a writer write for country and then turn around and sing an R&B ballad and then turn around and write something for K-pop. And I'm like, wow, that's versatile.
Yeah, how do you jump?
How do you jump? So you're almost more of the artist than the artist is. The artist is almost more of a face for the brand. Other unless you're a true real artist. But if you're just a guy who's buying songs and regurgitating them, you're kind of just a face for the brand.
Yeah, and I think it's in art, it's about the art. It's not about what you can do with the art. So making a really good song is the only thing. And when you hire these engineers and producers, they're like, my job is to make this sound the best that it can be in whatever framework you have.
Right.
So if it's K-pop, it's like, I want it to be the best K-pop song, and this is what to get out of you,
Right.
because you wrote this tune, so it's
Right.
ultimately you, that you're the source material.
100%.
You know, and it's easier when they cover a song because you can go listen to like all the other versions to sort of maybe get something from them that you can put
100%. Well, it's funny is with like K-pop and stuff. Like as a producer, like I've gotten like notes from people asking for music, and they literally tell you, okay, here's 3 reference songs, copy them. I'm like, I mean, literally the notes are basically copy the chord progression, copy the type of sound, copy the drum pattern. That's exactly what I want. You know, and it's like there's almost no creativity to that, you know. So that goes into the corporate world of music, which is kind of radio. How did you get into the radio side?
I've always wanted to be in radio ever since I was a little kid. I don't really know why. I just liked how they connected everything. This is this song, and they seemed to know a little bit more about the artist than the listener.
Right.
And they knew where they were in the country. Oh, this band's in Ohio, but in 3 days they're going to be in Philly playing here. And it was like, it seemed like it was sort of like the train station or the bus station of music. Like all the information went there. They coagulated it and then shot it out to the listener, and whoever was interested could do something with it.
Right.
And
you were almost the distributor at that point.
Yeah.
Because people only listen. I mean, they listen to radio for new music and for new people to follow, and they took the DJ's word on what was hip.
And if you listen to them and you kind of got to know their tastes,
right?
You're like, oh, right. So if this guy's talking about it, it must be something that I would like.
Right.
Or something, this guy seems to get the newest stuff first. He seems to have these interviews with the musicians that nobody else has. So somehow when he's not on the air, he's doing something.
Right.
That's the artists are like, well, I like what you're doing, so I want to talk to you more.
Right. 100%. Well, how did you get down here?
I was involved with a woman, and
that never happens down here.
I was I was in Boston at the time. We were working at a restaurant, and we got together. We broke up and then got back together, and then she got pregnant. And she's like, I want to have the baby in New Orleans. And she's from here.
Gotcha.
And this is the only city I've ever wanted to live in.
Okay.
Because of the music. I was so curious about the sounds that I was like, okay, I'll come to New Orleans.
Twist my arm.
Yep. And I was in the service industry, when I went to college, I went for radio broadcasting, but I mostly majored in like partying and like narcotics. So I still wanted to be on radio. I just sort of lost my way.
Right.
And she's like, you got to check out WWOZ. And I didn't know what it was. And I listened to it and I didn't even understand it. Because here are show hosts playing whatever the hell they want.
Right. They had full creativity.
They still do for the most part. And so I was like, what? You can do this? So pretty much a week after I moved here, I walked
You went right there. Huh?
I was like, how do I get on the air?
Wow.
And I was kind of laughing. I was like, wait, I went to college and dropped out and did all this crap and like hurt myself and pissed my parents off because I wasted all this money when all I had to do was go knock on the door.
Yeah, but without doing all that, you wouldn't be a good host.
Correct.
Because what makes and I consider myself like, I'm easy to talk to because I've done a lot of shit in my life, whether it was good or bad. I've gone down that road too, and you kind of have to have those experiences to talk to a bunch of people. And radio, you have to talk to a bunch of dynamic people that have gone through all kinds of channels in their lives.
Agreed.
And somehow connect with them. So no, I wouldn't give any of those experiences back, even though some of them were really bad experiences.
Same. I don't regret anything I've done. Going forward, I want to do it better.
Right.
But yeah, I agree exactly what you're saying. Because I think it's mostly the hard, bad experiences, the hurtful, and those are the ones that I think really give you life experience.
Yeah, because you learn from it.
Mm-hmm. And you really learn
from it.
And I think, talking with artists, most of where their art comes from is those experiences.
Yeah.
Like, work through this?
Yeah, no, listen. So, I mean, I'll give you as real of a situation as I can. You know, I dated someone for 10 years, from 17 to 27. We were engaged for about half of that, uh, and through parts of it, I was a pretty bad, addict, and through all kinds of different things, and just kind of exploring, trying to find things and hide things and da 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 da, whatever it was. But I didn't realize what it was like dating someone like that until after we broke up. The first person I dated afterwards was a worse addict than I was. And it showed me everything that the girl that I was just with went through with me. And I was like, wow, talk about open your eyes, and it's an experience I'll never forget because it truly changed the dynamics of how I thought about myself and how I felt about partying and how I felt about direction and where I'm going and how to help myself move forward, So it you have to learn from those moments.
Agreed. I think those are life is just nothing but a series of lessons.
Yeah.
Everything is here to teach you and to make you better if you choose to engage it that way.
Right.
And I agree with you 100%. When I left the bars and stopped drinking every day,
Right.
I realized I was really depressed, emotionally immature, with narcissistic and gaslighting tendencies.
Right.
I'm like, oh, well, there's some places to start, and it's how was I projecting that onto people, especially if I was self-medicating,
Right.
really drunk and getting angry.
Well, because at first you can handle it in a sense of where like no one really knows what's going on, and then at the tail end you start to realize, oh, I'm not hiding this very much anymore.
No, and you also realize that it's sort of encouraged with our society. Like you
Right.
have to when I was with my family over the holidays, we ate and drank a lot. Like I
Right.
had to really work hard to be like, I don't want to drink today.
Oh yeah.
And they weren't pushing me or
Oh yeah.
being rude
No,
about
listen,
it, but it was just
my dad
there.
died of liver cancer. Like my family is not opposed to drinking, so it's also one of those things. It's almost weird if you're not drinking because it's like part of the social network of the family.
You're upsetting the norm.
Yeah.
You're the weird thing.
Yeah.
And you're not.
Right.
But you just want to do it differently. And so that's just kind of that's been the hardest part is reintegrating in life and then being like, okay, well, these people I used to hang out with are still doing the same things, but I'm different.
Right.
Nobody's right or wrong or better or worse.
It's just where we're going right now.
Yeah, and I'm just not relating to you anymore. And it actually makes me sad sometimes because I could easily just jump back in that.
100%.
But I don't want it.
Or there's people you want to bring out,
Mm-hmm.
but there's no way.
They're into it.
Yeah,
they're
it is
happy
what it
where they're
is,
at.
you know.
And I like what's good for me is really only good for me. And if I try to tell somebody that they should do it this way, I'm being a jerk. Like I can't make anybody do anything.
No,
I can offer up suggestions, and then if they're like, "Oh, I might want to try that," then I can be there for support.
Right, but you can't push those people into the door.
Nah.
They have to walk. They have to walk through it. Well, what are those moments like? What's the thing that you think pulled you out of it the most?
Well, right before Katrina, I was probably on my way to becoming a pretty bad cocaine addict. So Katrina was the thing because I lost it all in Katrina and I had to move. I had evacuated. I had a daughter. And I evacuated to Texas where my parents were.
Gotcha.
So I was just like, it was the first time I asked my parents for advice and they were like, oh, we don't know.
Right.
We've never been through a hurricane.
Right.
I was like, well, who the hell do I ask? Start looking inward. So I was busy trying to figure life out that I was not thinking about drugs.
Right.
So I sort of I was so stressed about what was going to happen to me that I sort of cleaned up without even realizing it. And I was living at my parents' house in Texas. So I was like, this isn't going to last.
This isn't going to work.
You can stay here as long as you want. I was like, that's kind, but we both know that that's not going to work for all of us.
Want is a loose term.
Yeah. So I made my way back to Boston, and then I made my way back to New Orleans, and I had a really long talk with myself. It was like, if you go back there, you can't go back to who you were.
Right.
that wasn't good for you, and ultimately it wasn't good for anybody else
Right.
because you don't really have. I kind of damaged some relationships because I was just, being an addict and partying. You're just really selfish.
Right.
It's all
100%.
about you. So I wanted to. I wanted other things. I wanted to be more in my daughter's life and not just be kind of buzzed in it.
Right.
And now she's 23, but she was getting older, so it was different when she was a child. It was more of a one-way conversation.
Right.
And now it's quickly a two-way conversation,
Right.
and she's learning exponentially faster than I think she is.
100%.
I think I'm being.
They catch what? Yeah. No, I got a 4-year-old and almost a 2-year-old, and my 4-year-old is getting hard to hide the bong from right now. He as soon as I'm out the door, he notices, he hears the garage thing, and and he's like, I'm gonna go find Dad.
Right.
So it's getting harder and harder to push that envelope.
And it's also like with my daughter, I didn't want to hide things. So I had to figure out, like, how do I talk about it? And luckily, or depending on your perspective, like her stepdad, he was a grower for a while.
Got you.
So it was there all the time, but in a different way. Like me, it was just recreational.
Right.
But with them, it was like their
money.
It was money, their business. It was how like the household ran.
Right.
And I actually worked for him for one time, like as a trimmer. And it changes you.
Yeah.
Like most of the people that were really into it didn't smoke like they used to.
Right.
Because it was their business. And like at the end of the day, like, I don't want to deal with this stuff anymore. I want to go away from it.
Right.
So it changes you.
It's like anything, man. It's like moving to the beach and never going on the beach.
Yeah.
Like,
it happened to me at the radio station.
Yeah.
I stopped listening to music for pleasure for a short period of time.
Oh God, don't even get me started on that. The production part.
Yeah.
Like when I started, I truly have to push myself to listen to new music because when you're doing music all day, and just when I unplug, I want to just unplug. I don't want to hear anything.
Mm-hmm.
The quiet rides in the truck, I never thought were gonna ever happen. But now I'll ride quiet all the way home.
Yeah.
Just to decompress.
Mm-hmm.
But I've gotta almost force myself and get into those creative modes to just be like, I'm gonna just listen.
Agreed. It's happened to me because I'm listening to music for the show hosts and ultimately the listeners. So I always ask God. I wanted free music. Well, I got it in spades, but I didn't ask for like free music that was for me that I liked. So I'm listening to these jazz cats, and it's not that I don't like it, but it's not moving me.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, does Charlie B like this, or I'm thinking of the show host or like, is this gonna fit the blues show?
What New Orleans music do you love?
What do I love? Brass bands.
Brass bands.
Brass bands and Indian music. Brass bands, it's indigenous to New Orleans. It's not, I mean, it's other places now, but only because those people came here and were like, WTF is going on.
Right.
And like, I want to make that music. But a marching parade party, like, what are you guys going to do? We're just going to play music and walk down the street. Mm-hmm. If you want to come along.
Mm-hmm.
What?
So Mardi Gras marching bands.
Oh man. It's just, and they're like, now that it's newer generations, there's hip hop songs in there, and like mm-hmm. Hot 8 covers Joy Division. Like,
right.
Would I ever in a million years hear that tune? But in an uplifting way.
Right.
That whole band was like, yeah, you got to, if you want to be depressed, if you're not depressed and you want to be depressed, put on Joy Division.
Right.
If you're depressed and you want to feel like you're part of a community, stay there.
Hey, that's real art.
Yeah. We're going to elicit these specific emotions. But brass band, and then just, being a New Orleans show host, I am lucky that I get to like dabble in a lot of different things.
Right.
So I like seeing what's going on in the city. Like, I love that we have this country scene that's real and vibrant. We don't have the infrastructure for it, so they kind of come here,
right,
and go to the porch parties and then look for the studios. Like, this is a newer spot.
Right.
So, maybe they won't have to go to Nashville
Well,
places like this become,
that was
more
that was my
well
goal,
known.
but that was my goal. But that's one of the things that frustrates me about New Orleans is the actual culture of music business down here.
Or lack of.
Right, we have a great culture of music, but it is not treated like a business. It is treated more as a hobby, and until we get some people down here cultivating things and taking things seriously, it's just a free for all. And we have no label buildings. We have very few A&Rs. We have no marketing companies that here are specific for music. We don't have very many lawyers that are down here for music. Like there's just no infrastructure for people to truly build something. In LA, New York, you can walk in any of these buildings. Miami, Atlanta, you can walk in anywhere. Yet we've had some of the biggest labels in the world, No Limit and Cash Money and stuff before then, but nobody stayed here, so it's bothered me because I was in LA for 9 years. So I was born and raised here, and I was coming back and forth, visit family, and just realized that there's just a huge gap, so that was my goal, to build this place, and hopefully I'm shrinking that gap a little bit.
Yeah, and the musicians need more and more of it, and they need to know that it exists.
Yeah.
And how to get there. And like right now in the digital age, it's a little bit easier because an artist can be self-contained. They can have the software and
brass
the stuff.
band can't.
No, they need the streets, and that's another topic on how do you want your music?
Right.
Do you want it really easily and self-contained and efficient, or do you want it
natural and original?
And you might have to do more work. Like you have to go seek it out.
Right.
That was one of the, I think that's one of the things that's kind of been lost is you hear a song, you pull out your phone, you Shazam it, you find out what it is, you tell Siri to buy it with your Apple Pay, and then you just put your phone back in your pocket.
All
so
right.
You've gotten it, but it's almost like getting a glass of water.
Oh, 100%. No, listen, I truly miss the moments of waiting for an album to come out for months. And then the day it comes out, showing up at for me, it was CD cassette. I was right on the edge, because I'll be 40 in April. So I was right on the edge. But I had cassettes, but CDs were like, right before I got my first car type of thing, So but I remember specifically going to the store, going to find the little booth that had the headphones set and listening to all the new music that had come out, and you had to sit and listen there at the store, and I just felt like leaving with those CDs meant so much more than buying anything online. And I don't know. I think that's the physical aspect of it,
And you're developing these connections to it even before you have it.
It's a memory.
Yeah. And when you have it, like you touch it, it's tactile. When you're just, oh, that's a cool song, you put it in your phone. I mean, you might have already forgotten about it, and you'll never go back to that tune again.
It's just like money. I'll spend it way more if it's not in my pocket. If it's just numbers I'll just go, fine. It'll get built up again. But if it's in my pocket, I hold on to that crap.
Yeah. So I think we're just in a weird place of the process, because streaming, I don't think really worked out for most artists.
No. And it's not going to be the end all answer. We need to connect things again in the physical world. Because like I keep saying, like we need to get with let's say Budweiser. Budweiser's 12-pack for the next 6 months has a QR code with the next country album that's coming out on it. But it's got 2 bonus songs, and the only way to get those songs is to buy the 12-pack. Then you do a sales share with Budweiser on the sales. Now you've got something physical to the product again, which makes people want to do things, and then then they might get something special out of that QR code. I think that makes that identifies that moment again of something special in the memory. We got to do things like that in order to get back the physical world, because I just don't think people are going to go end up buying CDs again. I mean, you know,
I don't know if it'll be CDs or records. I think it's
I mean, vinyl sales have definitely driven up,
they're there.
but the masses are not going to.
I don't know what they're gonna do. I think though that the tactile sensation has to come back,
Right.
because like you said, it's about the experience. So
Right.
having a record, and
I mean,
was
hell,
with
when I used
this
to get a
person-
Master P CD, I used to get a poster out of the damn. When you open that plastic CD and you pull, there was a full poster in there.
Mhm.
You know.
And so I think this is just a step. Like, okay, the digital world showed up. They presented us with this streaming thing. Oh, it sounds good. We'll all
Right.
jump on. All right, nobody's making any money except for like those 9 guys.
Right. Right.
So now it's okay. Well, we're unhappy, and even the people like the Taylor Swifts and the really big, they're not making significant amounts of money
No.
on those platforms.
But they're also changed their business plans.
That-
They're all independent, completely separate, have like almost their own streaming platforms at, you know, for at times. I mean, even Jay-Z with Tidal. I mean, they really tried to buck the system.
So what if that's the next step, is that it becomes like directly like artist to consumer,
Right.
and everyone, that's just how you have to become a musician.
Well, the trunk sale is your website sale. You know.
And maybe you'll put like, you'll go to Spotify and be like, my single's coming out, and you can listen to it on Spotify, but if you want the record,
Right. You
gotta
gotta buy
go
it
here.
Right.
And Spotify doesn't have any kind of infrastructure like that, whereas like Apple Music,
Right.
they could easily pull iTunes out of mothballs and
Right.
run that up. So you can, everyone, artist can make a deal with iTunes and they'll sell it there. It'll be like the mall.
Yep.
But if you really want the primo stuff,
Yep.
you got to go to my website,
Right.
and
Yeah, Spotify
code
will give
or
you the
this or
crappy
that.
compressed mix, and
that'll just be the taste.
Yeah, we'll let you perpetuate that, and I'll keep all the high quality stuff in the full project with me. You know, and you will build a better fan base like that too. You will build people that will come buy tickets, will buy T-shirts, will buy hats. Because if you force them to buy that first initial thing and buy into the system, they will continue.
Yeah, and you're connecting with them on a deeper level. You're like, they're becoming a part of the artistic process.
Right.
You know, like Patreon, you know, if you go back in time, like Patreon's always been around. Like when Michelangelo was painting the Sistine Chapel, like it was Patreon people that were putting them up,
Right.
and feeding them. Like, you just paint, dude.
Right.
We got all just paint.
Just paint.
Paint that ceiling.
Right.
That's
Here's
us.
another brush. Keep going. Right.
You know, and that's kind of what Patreon is today. Like,
Right.
people who are like, well, I have a choice to spend this money. I can spend it on the NRA or I can spend it on an artist. Like, which thing is going to give me more value?
Right.
And art is just like, okay, well, we're going to catch up. We're going to bring up our business skills. Like, I'm running my own social media page. I'm running all this. And that's the cool thing with tech and AI, is it's going to make all of that easy. AI set me up a business plan that incorporates these things, and it will do it.
Right.
And then, you know, so you don't really have to spend all the time. You can just tweak it, or
You still got to do. You got to do the action part. Yeah.
you got to make the music.
You got to
make the art.
You got to do the action part.
But so it's going to be easier, because right now, like, I see musicians just struggling because they're a bass player. They're not an accountant. They're not a chauffeur. They're not a travel agent. They're not these things, but they're all learning.
They're a real musician. Well, speaking about real musicians, what was it like interviewing Aaron Neville?
Oh, man.
Because that's somebody who didn't have to deal with tech and all that stuff. He was just a real musician.
Nah, it was amazing. And he was talking to Aaron, was like understanding how a city works, but artistically.
Right.
You know, everything he picked up was from the streets, from the radio, from what his parents were listening to, or like his uncle, his spiritual guy.
It's just natural.
And then all of the other sides of that stuff, the dark side. I mean, man, you read his book, like, he was a heroin addict, like, before he was out of high school.
Wow.
Because his idols, that's what they did.
That's what they did. Wow.
So, you know, you just want to be like those guys.
Right.
And we didn't talk about that stuff. He brought it up, and I was like, we don't need to. I just wanted to talk about the music. But the little nuggets of like when he smiled a little bit or paused, I was like, I knew that was important. Like the importance of doo-wop music
Right.
on his career was just like, whoa. Like I found myself going back and listening to all of those records to try to hear what he was feeling and
Wow.
wanted to get it out. And you could see like he was just, it was a sponge and he had to absorb it and he had to go find it all. You know, he didn't have an internet.
Right. He had to explore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And being black, you know, like a lot of times they would know that at this guy's house was a jam session going on. So they would run over there and sit on the porch and listen.
Right.
And then they knew in 2 hours there was this other band playing at the church. If they ran through the white neighborhood, they could get there in 10 minutes. If they ran around it and did the right thing and, you know, so they wouldn't have to earn the wrath of the law, it would take them an hour and a half. So it was like, how bad do they want to listen to the music? Because sometimes they were like, we're running through.
Wow.
Because they wanted to get to that musician to hear what they were doing.
That's crazy.
And it was like they put their lives on the line to find the music.
To find music.
It was about survival. So I feel like when it's sort of a life or death situation,
right?
You know, I got to do this. If I don't sing this song and get it out of me, I'm going to do this,
right?
Which is robbing and stealing. And I already know where this gets me.
Right.
Like I've spent time in jail.
It's an outlet.
Yeah. So, you know, and you understand why these guys, their music is so timeless, why it's still influencing people, because
the passion,
everything, their whole life is in there,
right?
You know, and when you listen to like a blues artist today, and you know, you don't hear the struggle in their songs. They're just
you don't hear the blues.
Chords. Yeah, they've learned the chords.
They've never had the blues.
Yeah, they've never put their struggles into the tunes. They're just, you know, playing stuff that they like.
The blues is different nowadays. Now is you can't get an Uber, you can't run through the neighborhood. You know, I mean, it's just a different type of environment. You know, and that iron sharpens iron type of, you know, growing up I don't think is on this whole generation. You know, even if I think about my dad and things that he went through, and then what I went through, and I'm looking at my kids, and I'm like, man, how do I make them men like my dad, not going through the shit that he went through? You know, but those, going back, those experiences, that's what brought Aaron to be one of the great artists he is, you know, and yeah, he was definitely one of the ones from New Orleans that is iconic and needs to be remembered.
Yeah, and those guys put it all out in the songs.
Like,
right. I'm singing about heartbreak because this is about my heart breaking.
Right.
And now that we have these songs, some people just do them because it's a good ballad, but their heart wasn't broken.
Right.
So they don't have that same connection. So it's harder for me as a listener to feel your authenticity, because I know, because you said it in an interview, that I covered this song because I liked this part, but not because I was having a direct feeling connection to it.
Right, 100%. Well, so how do you feel, because being on the radio, how important is radio now?
I think it's the most important thing right now. We've kind of come full circle with music. So the way I see music is like, let's just say New Orleans, and rock and roll started in New Orleans. It went out into the world, and it went out the way it was recorded in the studio with the stuff they had.
Right.
So it went out like a wave, like a wave goes out, and a wave goes out, and then to be a full wave, it comes back. And when it goes out, it absorbs experiences and brings them all back in. So music, when it started, we made singles and we put them on jukeboxes. And where are we again?
Right.
Most artists are making singles and they put them on jukeboxes.
Right.
Spotify, Pandora, Tidal. But those things, they have chosen the model of catering to a person. So I'm going to make a playlist of Dave hanging out with Drake, drinking tea on a rainy day.
Right.
And that's really specific to you based on what they know about your choices. But if you're going to play the music out there for the people and it's only relating to you, you're alienating everyone else.
Right.
Whereas the radio is like, I'm playing this music because I think it's good. What do you think?
Right.
And so we're back to the people personalities. And OZ is a, I'm so lucky and grateful because
Right.
most radio stations aren't like that, where it's the DJ that's in charge. And
Right.
I'm coming in feeling like this today. This is what we're playing.
That's awesome.
And the listeners catch that. And it's building trust. It's about building a relationship. But when radio started, it was really one way. The show host talked,
Right.
and everybody else listened.
Right.
Well, now with texting and emailing and all these things, the listeners can talk back.
Right.
So it's a little bit more of a two-way conversation. Hey, why'd you play this? Or what was going on? Like, and those are my favorite calls.
Right.
Usually they call me to correct me. No, you said that name wrong, or like that's not the guy who wrote it.
Well, you're not from here. It's all right.
Yeah.
We'll let you go with it a little bit.
But
How do you like? What's your? Do you feel your audience numbers are like? Did streaming take it away, and then is it building back up again, or do you feel like you're still comparable to audience numbers?
Streaming increased our audience.
Increased it.
Increased it because now we can go to the whole world.
Okay.
And once again, I'm grateful. I'm in New Orleans,
Right.
where it's like musical cannons going off every day. There's all kinds of music being made here, and not by, new musicians, like veterans who, if they were to play in New York, they could play Carnegie
Right.
or the Blue Note or this. And here they're playing on the street in front of Kermit's. So you're getting the same quality of musicians. You're just getting them in a more casual way.
Casual way, right?
So people want that casual New Orleans
100%. They want that big easy. They search for it.
So when we stream, people are listening. When we did our first Festing in Place, when the pandemic happened and Jazz Fest was canceled, we made Festing in Place. And we just were like, let's do something. It'll be fun. And so we built like a jazz fest. We made cubes. We partnered with the Jazz and Heritage Archive, and they let us go through, and we built cubes, but everything was from a different year.
Gotcha.
So it was like a time capsule of
Wow.
Jazz Fest. And we put it on around Jazz Fest. We did a weekend, 3 days, 8 to 8 with the cubes. And we set up our bandwidth as if it was Mardi Gras, which at that time was our like highest listenership during Mardi Gras Day. So that's what we set up for. 30 minutes in, we crashed.
Wow.
Because 1 million people or some crazy number like tuned in. And we were like, whoa, people really need this.
Wow.
So we,
That's awesome.
yeah.
That's awesome.
And it was just like, holy crap.
All right. Well, radio is not dead. Radio is not dead. The talk is fake.
Mm-hmm.
Radio is not dead. No, especially for stations that are creative and don't bow down to the corporate world.
Right. But that's the thing is, if you're a listener, man, make a phone call. Call those other stations. Hey, I want to hear this.
Right.
Because they will listen eventually. You just have
got to keep calling.
You have to take the action.
Yep.
Make the phone call, write the letter, send the email, go walk the walk.
Make the change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's scary and it's hard or uncomfortable, but in the long run, you're going to be a lot happier.
Absolutely. Well, talking about happiness, what because we have to wrap this up a little bit, but what brings elation to you in your life?
These days, it's looking inward and finding the answers, and then being able to help other people look inward. Whether it's on my radio show and people call up and tell me thank you, and then go into a story. Someone passed, someone graduated, this song reminded, like, whoa.
Right.
I just thought I was playing a Johnny Adams song because I needed 3 minutes. And here it is. This person, their whole life was moved by it. And just like I'm involved in breath work and sound therapy, and the same deal. Like when I do a breath work session, sometimes they're just laying there and I'm wondering if they're sleeping. I'm working with them, but then they talk back to me and they say, this is what happened. I was, really? You went through all that laying right there just now?
Right.
Awesome.
Right.
So the idea of being connected and present and wanting to find solutions to the things that are people are struggling with instead of complaining.
Right.
And like I said, everything's a lesson. So all the things I see or get under my skin, those are the things that I want to work on.
Well, once you get to that spot where you're actually compartmentalizing your fears and the issues you go through, like we were talking about earlier with your retreats and meditation and mushrooms and all that stuff, if you learn how to compartmentalize, I feel like you can when you hit those moments in life that you have to, you kind of know where to put it. You know the shelf. If once you've done it, a few times.
And also, you just become more willing to accept and allow things. Like I can't control anybody.
No.
So I can
It's way bigger than me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I can just be like, okay, that person's doing that thing, I'm gonna give them their space. I don't want to be anywhere near it because
Right.
I don't feel safe.
Absolutely.
I'm not gonna tell, like, I don't know why they're doing what they're doing. And it could be something that they absolutely need to
But
do.
it's nothing I need.
And nothing I need, or I shouldn't
Yep.
judge them and say you're doing something wrong. And then I find out the backstory. I'm like, oh no, you're doing something really right.
Right.
But
right.
it's just me. It's up to me not to judge.
Right. No, 100%. 100%. All right. Well, great. Well, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah.
And
Thanks for having me.
appreciate you coming through and giving us an honest conversation. I feel like it's good to hear radio is not dead and people are still listening and shout out to WWOZ for staying creative and Big Easy.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I think radio is for everybody. And if you want to check it out, I'm on WWOZ. My show's on Mondays at 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Any socials?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Murf1313, and that's it right now. I just got off X, and I'm looking around to see what the new thing is.
I'm sure there'll be one this year.
Yep.
I'm sure there'll be one new one.
Agreed.
Well, great. Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you guys for joining us in Elation Podcast today, where we enjoy exhilarating euphoria through creation and collaboration.